Hello class, welcome to Bio 103 General Biology 1. I'm Dr. Ed Wong, your lecture instructor. In this first mini lecture, I want to introduce you to the course's learning goals and structure. Finally, I'll share a brief autobiography. There are several things I hope you gain from Bio 103. The first is more curiosity. Science is all about discovery, finding out new things. So I hope you'll want to learn more about how living things work, especially since you are a living thing yourself. Another thing I hope you'll discover is that biology is all about chemistry, because living things are composed of chemical compounds consuming chemicals to produce new chemicals. So don't be afraid of chemistry because it makes life possible. We'll learn a lot about cells, the foundational unit of all living things on this planet. We'll uncover the parts of a cell and discover how a cell is run like a modern city. Life requires energy, the capture of energy, the production of energy, and the consumption of energy. And we'll look at it in the context of metabolism and the obesity crisis. Finally, we'll see how this century can be called the genetic century, as we now have the technology to not only decipher the code of life, but to manipulate it as well. In the laboratory portion of this course, we'll learn how to use tools and techniques to answer biological questions. Our textbook this year is the 11th edition of Solomon's Biology. I call it the Hummingbird edition because of the cover. We'll be using our textbook constantly. In fact, your very first assignment starts right away. You'll need to read selections from Chapter 1 so you can complete an online quiz very soon. If you don't have your textbook yet, don't worry. I posted a PDF of the relevant pages in Chapter 1 online. By the way, the textbook is cheaper online, and you can also rent copies for a semester or a year. Although you should ask the campus bookstore if they will price match anything you can find. If you plan to take Bio 104 General Biology 2 next semester, you'll be using the same book. All of our course material is stored online on Blackboard Learn. You need to bookmark this URL in your web browser. Access is through your WCSU username and password. Please note that Blackboard will open for student access on the very first official day of classes. When you log into Blackboard, go to the drop-down menu by your name and find the course you're looking for. Once in the Bio 103 Blackboard Start page, you'll see a number of places to visit. First, there's the menu bar to the left. The menu bar has links to the Start page, of course. The What's New section is the Announcements page where I notify you of important deadlines or changes to the course. The syllabus contains the description of the course, all of its rules and regulations, and the schedule. The syllabus is a must-read. The Ask Dr. Wong section is my discussion board where you can post questions, anonymously if you desire, about any course topic. I even encourage students to answer one another's questions if they know the right answer. There's a link for Blackboard Collaborate, our class conferencing app, which we'll use for online class meetings if that becomes necessary. I've even included tutorials if you've never used Collaborate before. If you're a computer science student and you're wondering what the heck you're doing in a biology course, check out this link. And if you need to reach me or any classmates by email, use the Blackboard email tool. I'd prefer if you didn't contact me through regular school email. Finally, there's a link to the grades you earn for each of your course assignments. Back on the center of the Start page, you'll see other important things to read. The welcome video is the one you're watching right now and is obviously full of information about the course. And there's another link for a printable copy of the syllabus. The other essential link is the How to Succeed folder, full of tips from former students on how to, well, succeed in this course. First, let's introduce the syllabus. You have to read this first, since it contains critical information about the course, including class rules, resources, and schedules. And don't forget that you'll have to take an online Blackboard quiz about the syllabus and other introductory material very, very soon. So check your syllabus schedule for the deadline. Next, let's visit the Success folder. I've assembled videos and articles on how to succeed in this course. I wish I had such a resource when I was a freshman. I remember sitting in my freshman biology class of 300 students and just being somewhat overwhelmed. Though I was mostly a straight A student in high school, college seemed like a different animal. None of my previous study strategies worked, and I was lucky to pull through my first semester with a C average. It took me another year or so and lots of help from upperclassmen in my department before I discovered the proper way to prepare for college tests and quizzes. That's why I feel so strongly about teaching my freshmen not simply biology, but how to manage the college workload. Over the years, I've discovered that many of my students are actually unprepared for a college-level science course. What worked for them in high school did not work in college, just as I had experienced. And I've seen the tragic results of that, as on average, only 70% of Bio 103 students pass the course. I'm convinced that if I can just get the remaining 30% to buy into these study strategies, they would succeed as well. So please take a serious look at this success folder. Now let's talk about the course structure. This is not a traditional lecture course. You actually have to do things before coming to lecture. First, you need to view a mini lecture video and read selections from the textbook on that particular chapter or topic. I encourage you to take notes as you watch and read. This will become very helpful when you ultimately have to take the online quiz for this chapter. Remember, you do all of this prior to attending the lecture. When we finally do meet for lecture, whether it's in person or online on Blackboard Collaborate, we will do several things. First, we'll clarify muddy points and answer your questions. Some of this will be done within breakout groups, as I mentioned before, so you can help each other learn. We'll also practice putting in the knowledge into action with case studies or problem sets. Finally, I will weigh in with some additional things you should know about the topic. After we cover a topic, we have to reinforce what we've learned. Therefore, I provide study guides and practice tools to challenge your brain to recall information. I even have links to external websites that provide practice quizzes. This is how you will prepare for exams. To find materials for each chapter, go to the lecture links in the sidebar and click the folder you want. Let's take a look at the Chapter 1 lecture folder. First, you need to read the textbook and any other assigned articles and watch the mini lecture video. Next, you take the online Blackboard quiz before the deadline. I've also posted suggested YouTube videos that explain specific concepts. To practice what you've learned, you'll use the chapter study guide and external practice quizzes. When you get the syllabus, you'll see the lecture and lab schedules. The schedules are so important. There's a lot to do each week, and if you're not careful, you'll miss assignments and points. Here's an example of a lecture schedule from a previous year. Note that once the class met for lecture on January 27th, they had to read the course syllabus and then complete the first introductory quiz 2 days later by January 29th. By January 31st, they had to complete the Chapter 1 readings and mini lecture video, and then complete the Chapter 1 quiz before we met for the Chapter 1 lecture on February 1st. By February 2nd, they had to complete the pre-lecture material and quiz for Chapter 2 before they met for the Chapter 2 lecture on February 3rd. Does this sound like we're going too fast? Well, welcome to college. Let's take a look at how the lab is structured. Before lab, you'll be provided with a pre-lab video to watch and a lab handout to read. The video will explain the techniques and experimental question. The handout will usually have practice activities you need to complete before coming to lab. This will prepare you for the experiment you have to do in lab. After you've viewed and worked through those materials, you take a Blackboard pre-lab quiz before coming to lab. The lab quiz covers materials from the previous week, if that applies, as well as questions on the upcoming lab. Therefore, you'll always be tested on old and new material. We meet in Science Building 203 for in-person labs. In the event that labs go online, we will meet for labs synchronously on Blackboard Collaborate with your lab instructors. For in-person labs, your lab instructor will briefly review the concepts and techniques used in the experiment. You'll then perform the experiment and gather data, and then you'll complete the lab worksheet before the end of the lab period. If you and your lab team screw up the experiment and have to repeat it, you'll still have to complete the worksheet before you leave lab. That's why it's so crucial that you prepare before coming to lab so you don't mess up the experiment and force your teammates to hate your guts for holding them up. If we're forced to do online virtual labs, we will review what you've learned from the lab video and handout, and use breakout groups to have you brainstorm how to set up hypotheses and use the techniques to answer experimental questions. Then we'll give you some experimental data, and you'll go home and use that data to complete the worksheet that is due within 24 hours, and then submit it back through Blackboard. Twice a semester, you'll be tested with a lab practical exam that not only tests you on content, but also techniques. Your lab instructor will explain further in lab. Blackboard Learn is a useful platform to administer our online material, but can also run into problems when it crashes or shuts down from routine maintenance. Be aware that that's your scheduled Blackboard maintenance every Friday between 2 to 6 a.m. Not that many of you are doing homework at that time, hopefully. Be careful not to wait until the last moment to access Blackboard. Sometimes there's a crash and you won't be able to get your materials and assignments in on time. If you have any disabilities that could affect your performance in class, please contact the Office of Accessibility Services. The staff there will work with you and me to develop accommodations so you can manage the course. You know, we're very serious about academic integrity. As the syllabus says, university guidelines concerning academic misconduct will be strictly enforced. Any student found cheating or plagiarizing will earn a 0 for the assignment and be reported to the proper authorities for further disciplinary action, which may include expulsion from the university. Now, just in case you think this is just fine print we have to put into the document, let me tell you that there have been 8 biology students over the past 10 years who have been expelled by the university for academic misconduct. They were caught cheating or plagiarizing. Now, this is permanently on their records wherever they go, and it just isn't worth doing something so stupid. As I mentioned before, the attrition rate for this course over the past several decades is about 30%, regardless of who's teaching it. So it's not that I'm a tough instructor. If you desperately want to fail the course, here are the steps to take, but hopefully none of you will take these tips seriously. So if you want to flunk this course, skip lecture or at least sleep through it, don't take notes, forget to do the online quizzes, study for exam the weekend before, that's a big one, skip lab, forget deadlines for assignments, and finally, ignore Dr. Wong's study tips. Okay, now let me introduce myself. I was born in Washington, D.C. at Walter Reed Medical Center while my father was serving in the U.S. Army. I guess that makes me an Army brat. I was their firstborn son, so all the pressure for upholding the family honor fell on me. My parents were originally young immigrants who fled China when the communists took over, and they eventually made it over to America. I was blessed to attend some great schools, and despite my disastrous freshman year, I earned my bachelor's degree in biochemistry at the University of Maryland, followed by a PhD in molecular biology from Indiana University, and I even did a research fellowship at Cornell University. As you can see, my area of biology is small. No, I mean really small, even smaller than cells, because I study the molecules that make up living things, primarily DNA, the genetic information molecule. When I was finishing up high school, I had a dream of becoming a variety of things that didn't seem to fit together. I wanted to be the first National Geographic photographer with a PhD in chemistry opening on Broadway. And it wasn't until I had a chance to teach as a graduate student that I discovered that all of these interests and skills lent themselves perfectly to helping me become a successful teaching professor. Besides teaching the freshman courses in upper-level molecular biology, my current research involves cyanobacteria, misnamed blue-green algae. These are not plant algae. Instead, they're photosynthetic bacteria, among the earliest forms of life on this planet and believed to be the organisms that created the oxygen atmosphere we breathe today. It turns out that some cyanobacteria can produce toxic compounds lethal to animals, including humans. My research focuses on the factors that trigger toxin production. If you live locally, you might have seen newspaper articles about the work my lab does every summer to screen for toxic cyanobacteria in Candlewood Lake, Lake Zor, Lake Willinona, Bantam Lake, Ball Pond, and Beesick Lake. Here are some other favorites of mine. I love biking, hiking, and photography. I love chocolate, and I love broccoli, and here's a picture of chocolate-dipped broccoli, which I haven't tasted yet, but sounds delicious. I serve the community through my church, Faith Church, and you might have seen their large campus up there on Route 7 in New Milford. Finally, my technology is Apple. I've been using Mac computers since they first came out in 1984. My wife is a nurse practitioner with Anthem Blue Cross. My son Daniel graduated from WestConn and is working on his Doctor of Pharmacy degree at Virginia Commonwealth University. My daughter Samantha is in the nursing program here at Western. And with all these biomedically oriented people in the same family, dinner conversations get pretty interesting, or gory, but we're used to it. Finally, here are my fur kids, my Chihuahua, Pepe, my Pomeranian, Roxy, and my Chihuahua miniature pincer mix, Sandy. You'll always hear me talking about exploring the national parks and state parks. Forget about traveling to other countries for adventure. The United States has the most spectacular places to visit within our national and state park system. There's every kind of ecosystem you can imagine. Since the pandemic began, I've gotten Mrs. Wong hooked on biking. So we've explored hundreds of miles of rail trails in Connecticut and along the East Coast. And yes, my pups also get to cycle with us. Okay, enough about me. Here's your to-do list. Remember that Blackboard opens on the first day of classes. Check the date for our first Bio 103 lecture meeting and be there. Then read the syllabus and take the Blackboard quiz before the deadline. Read the Chapter 1 selections and the Bonner article and watch the Chapter 1 video, and then take the Chapter 1 Blackboard quiz before the deadline so you'll be ready when we cover Chapter 1 in lecture. Oh, and by the way, check the lab schedule to find out when labs officially begin and when you have to complete the pre-lab assignments. I'm looking forward to being with you this semester.